What is in the bag for me? So I think my what's in the bag is quite an interesting one, because I've got a couple of little quirky areas that I just think are different to normal. However, the first thing is the golf ball. I've got the Srixon Z-Star Divide. I really like that separation in colour. I like to line it up on par 3s and par 4s even, like off the tee. So if I want to hit a draw, I quite like the idea of having this to the right hand side, so I can start the ball out to the right and draw it back, or if I want to start down the left for a fade, I set this ball up and I do the same thing. I'm using this as a guide, and I have had it where I had a par 3 before these existed in the UK. I used the Q-Star Divide and I had a par 3, wind off the right really strong, so I lined this up to the right hand side, smacked it that way, the wind brought it back to the pin, I had about a 4-foot putt, lovely jubbly. Good premium quality, really nice and sticky on your wedges, so it gets loads of spin around the greens, and it's got a nice core that keeps up with my swing speed. I would actually like to have this in a Z-Star XV, but I really like the optical elements of this. With the XV I would get a bit more spin off a wedge, and I would get maybe a bit more ball speed off the driver because it's got that harder core, but they don't do it in the Divide, which is well annoying. Glove wise, Srixon premium leather. I've got a red dot on here, so idea behind that is when I grip my club and put it down to the ball, I see this red dot and I think, right, shut up, where does the ball want to go? Simples, all for the sake of a bit of a marker. Let's start with the putter, standard stock head cover. But I've got the Huntington Beach Soft Premier 3 Cleveland putter. I've given it a little bit of jazz in terms of the paint feel. It's got that lime green in the back of the head there. I really like that sight line being bright green as well. It sits behind the ball lovely and gives me a nice visual to work with. A nice milled face that grips the back of the ball, helps me roll it. I do in a way feel like I want a more expensive putter in the golf bag, but I keep holding putts with this and I just love it. I really can't complain. This version, if I put it in my fingertips, the toe is quite heavy. This toe is straight down. That encourages a bit more rotation through the ball, and I tend to hit the putts to the right hand side, so I feel like it just helps me shut the face down and not miss to the right hand side. I would rather miss 5 inches left than 1 millimeter right, but I do tend to roll a lot of putts in, so I'm quite happy with it. Wedges, I'm rocking the RTX 6, which has the Hydra Zip grooves, which are very good when they're wet. I find that the full shot yardages don't change. They're much better at dispersing the water when it's dewy on the ground or raining. I have my yardages for a full shot and a half shot written on the clubs, which I really like. If I'm playing a tournament, I will spend a week dialing those in. I might wipe them off and change them because they're not always constant every couple of months. I just want to recheck them. Bounce wise, I'm rocking the mid bounce in the 52 because it's a bit more uniform to the pitching wedge. I've got full bounce in the 56 because I like that to stick out a bit more. It's a little bit more relief for me in terms of like turf interaction. And then I go low bounce on the 60 because if I do get a tight line, I want to tuck the club under the ball, I've got something that does it in the bag without having that low bounce all the way through. Sometimes I need it to stick out when it's a little bit fluffy or it's a little bit soft on the ground, and then when it gets a bit hard and a bit tight and deadpan, then I'm here. Dynamic Gold spinner, wedge flex, tour issue. These are the stock shafts that you get with these wedges. I haven't toyed around with them yet because I'm actually quite happy with all the yardages that I get with them on the golf course. I've got no reason to change them at the very minute, but my favorite thing I've got in these is I've got an 80 gram, 60 gram and 40 gram tour lock in the bottom of the grip. You might have seen in another video where I added weight to the top of the club because it helps me keep that a bit more stable and still while the club pendulums around that point. Helps with strike, helps with the short shots around the greens, and on a full shot I didn't see much difference in terms of the flight, spin and consistency of yardage that it created, so I'm really happy with that element of these clubs. I do go into depth on that on another video with one club, and I've just basically done it all the way through the 3 progressively. If I were to change anything about my wedges, the only thing I would do is, if I were to change anything with my wedges, I would put the lie angle flatter and I would put +4 grips on them because I just prefer the feel of those. The reason I haven't done that is because they are demo wedges for the shop and I don't want to play around with them too much to suit me, when actually I need to put them in people's hands to try them out and see if they like them. Iron wise, I've got Srixon ZX7 in 5-iron 2 pitching wedge, and I have got my yardages written on the back of every head. Got 134, 152, 165, 177, 188 and 205. Again, these are demo clubs, so I'm not toying around with them too much. What I would do if they were my own, but I need to order my own set anyway, I would go 1 degree flatter, which puts the toe lower, holds the ball out to the right hand side. I love the grips though. We've got the +4 multi-compound red, which are slightly thicker on that bottom half, so it just slows my right hand down a little bit and I prefer that feel. I do have another video coming out on grip sizes to see how that actually affects the data on the ball flight. tight, but I have a little twist to that, so do jump on it. So the next thing I want to point out is the laser rangefinder. I've had this since I was about 18 years old. This is the Bushnell Tour V2. Well old now, but it's still going strong. I've got no reason to change it. I keep a spare battery in the bag because when it dies, I feel like I've lost a limb. When I'm looking at the pin, I purposely zap a hedge behind it to get a number, and then I go for the pin and make sure I get something shorter just to make sure I've got the pin. The first time I ever used the laser, I zapped a hedge, hit it in the hedge. Now, the next bit above the 5 iron, so the 5 iron's a 205 carry club, so the next step up for me is either a 7 wood. This is the Srixon ZX 7 wood, lovely bit of kit, really good looking sitting behind the ball. Launches the ball really high, lands really soft. Basically, I've seen a lot of tour players using a 7 wood and I was curious to see what it does for me. The shaft I've got in here is an Aldila 1 shaft in 65X. It's got that step in there and the tip stiffness is T8, which I don't know what that means, but the tip stiffness is really hard. When I used it in a driver, it gave the swing weight really heavy, so the top end of the club head just felt really sluggish and hard to get through the ball. So putting it into a 7 wood brings that swing weight to something absolutely bang on ideal, and it feels lovely through the ball. Again, high flight, soft landing shots, but that's not ideal in the wind. So I do sometimes swap it out for a Srixon ZX4 4 iron. Now the reason I go Srixon ZX4 is because it's just got that little bit more meat on it, a little bit more forgiving. It's got that hollow head construction, so when they make them, they need this to let the air out for when there's heat inside the head. Thinner face, stronger loft, longer flying shots. My normal ZX7 4 iron does not go further for me, so this fits that bill beautifully. Although I do have to choose between that 4 iron and the 7 wood, otherwise I've got 15 clubs. Now the 3 wood I've got is the Srixon ZX Mark II. This one is adjustable because it is from the fitting kit, so I can toy around with different shafts. I've got the Aldila 1 shaft in 65S, so slightly softer than the one in the 7 wood. I find that this is just as stable, it just floats up a little bit higher, lands a bit softer. I do want to play around with the 13.5 head on some different shafts just to see how that performs in comparison, because I feel like with the 3 wood I'm just a little bit shy of the yardage I would actually like from it. It doesn't quite get there for me. So the funny thing here is when I'm not using the 4 iron, I've got the 7 wood in the bag. The 7 wood then goes up to a 2 iron, so I'm going wood, iron, wood. So distance wise I've got 7 wood, 2 driving iron utility, ZX Mark II, and then the 3 wood. I don't know many people that go wood, iron, wood, but the 2 iron just gives me a really nice distance in between the two. It's a very good option off the tee to flight the ball lower, get into wind for example. I really like it. It does have the stock Recoil F4, which is a little bit too much bend in it for me, but I know what it does, I know what to expect, and I can predict the shot quite well. Again, a nice low draw, mid-flight draw, that sort of shot is absolutely in the locker. Then we go up to the big stick. I've got Batman head cover, we've got the Srixon ZX5 LS, we've got the Srixon ZX5 LS with that weight at the front of the club. That just helps keep the spin down in comparison to having the weight at the back. I've got 9.5 and I've got it on the -1 loft setting to get it to 8.5, and I'm rocking the Ventus Black 7X Velocore. Absolute weapon of a shaft. The only thing I want to change on this is the grip, because the grip is really thin and scrawny. I want something bigger. I want the +4 on there because I just prefer the feel of it. Once I've done that, I'll be very happy with the driver. That concludes my bag setup. Is there anything in there that you think's a bit weird, or is there anything in there that you do yourself? Let me know in the comments because I want to see what you got.